I'm Don Reed, Saltwater Fly Tires. Today we're going to tie a couple of my old favorite patterns. One is a destroyer pattern. It's, a friend of mine once took a white pattern of this. He had come up with this particular pattern originally, the white version of it, and had taken it down to the Everglades. And he calls me up and he's real excited about this. And he says, you know, Don, I've got a great new fly. I want to call it the 40 Snook Fly. And I said, what do you mean, Doug? Why do you want to call it a 40 Snook Fly? He says, well, that, you know, that Finnish raccoon that you gave me, I tied a fly using that, and this is going to be the fly that we're going to tie today. It's very similar to it. He says, I caught 40 snook on that fly before they broke off because I didn't change my leader. He says, so this is the best fly I've ever had for snook. We're going to base our fly on a SL12S 1/0 hook. This is one of my favorite bends. It has a very good sink rate. You can hang the fly in the column at a certain depth very easily with this, using this particular hook. They make it the same bend in a couple of different weights. So we're going to use the SL12S 1/0. And we're going to tie this fly. All right, mounted in the vise. All right, this is going to be a olive version of this fly. It's a, and we're also going to, the sink rate on this is going to be greater than what we normally use in 2 feet of water. We're going to make this one for 4 feet or more. So we're going to go ahead and wrap the hook shank. That's the way I always start my flies. I'm going to trim this off this time. I don't have enough to break. But at any rate, cover it all the way back and then come back up to where you're going to tie in your eye. And I believe that we're going to use a extra small lead eye, barbell eye. Wapsi makes the best I've ever seen. So we're going to use that. We're going to mount that eye directly on the top of the fly. 6 turns, and then wrap underneath to tighten. To make a good tight eye connection is the most important part of any particular fly, like this especially. So that's good and firm. All right. We're going to go back to point directly over the point of the hook. You'll see what I mean in a second. So that the thread is hanging directly over the point of the hook. We're going to cut a piece of this olive Finnish raccoon and use a relatively small piece of it. Keep it fairly trim. Maybe a little less than that. Maybe this much. And we're going to cut it down just a little bit. So we're going to trim the butts using a good pair of hair scissors. All right, so this is our tail. We're going to tie it in right over that point, directly over the hook point, and then wrap back to just in front of the bend of the hook, where the bend begins, and then wrap this down good and tight. All right. We're going to come back here and we're going to make a few wraps around the fur called a post. We're going to post this tail so that it's less likely to foul. All right, looks like a little ponytail. All right, so we're going to go back up to here, going to soak it in real good with a little bit of good old-fashioned Dave's Flex Cement. We're going to soak the eyes in real well so they go nowhere for sure. All right, that's set in. At this point, we're going to tie in a little bit of flash material, just to give it a little flare. We're going to use some gold crystal flash, and probably maybe 6 strands. Um, 6 strands of crystal flash. And I don't like even tips like this. It just doesn't look natural. So I tend to pull them out a little bit like this, and that way you get uneven on both ends. I don't know if you can see that very well, but at any rate, nature is not square. There are very few hard lines in nature. So we're going to cross it over the thread. Again, we're going to pull it down. We're going to set it just in front of where we actually want it to be, because at this point we want to kind of create a veil over this tail, around the tail. So we're going to wrap the mylar, or this crystal flash, around it, and then you wrap it in and that sets it. Okay? So we have a good wrap all the way around. It'll look real nice when it's finished. All right. This fly does get a waist of red Estaz. We use Estaz Grande, bright red. So really, really good crystal chenille material. And there is a huge difference in the quality of these materials compared to just crystal cactus chenille is what it's normally called. This is a better product in the long run. I believe that your flies will last longer if you use quality materials. So we're going to put a little bit of cement in here, just enough to create a little tack on the shank. And then we're going to tie this in and get it nailed down real good. And then we're going to make like 3 turns of this red Estaz, pulling it back each time, just to keep it from overwrapping. And then we're going to wrap it and tie it off right in front of where we started the. This ties up over the top of the tail section, where we tied the fur in on top of the shank. So it does 2 things. One, it hides the wraps, and it creates a waist in the middle of this fly, and it also creates a trigger point using the red material. Fish focus on that, especially in shallower waters where the red holds up. The deeper you go in the water, of course, red tends to fade out. But the fish can see this, and they key in on the red part, whether it's gills or injured bait fish or whatever. We're then going to use a piece of Enrico Puglisi's streamer brush. This is olive. It has a little bit of mylar mixed in with it, not too much, but just a little bit. It's a really great material to use. It's about 2 inches wide overall. I tend to cut the tag end of it off so that I don't have a lot of extra wire hanging around in there that can either cut you or your thread. You want to tie that tag in securely up against your Estaz. All right, and wrap it down good and tight, and then go out to the exit point. All right, you start to wrap this material around, palmer it. Use my brush. Everyone should have dog brush. That's a small indicator brush is what it's called. We sell them. They're made by Montana Fly. Around, tend to keep it in my hand most of the time. Wrap it, pull this stuff back so that you don't overwrap the material. You want to try to keep most of it from being overwrapped. This keep winding. I like it fairly dense in here, so we're going to use a little extra material. The closer you wrap it, the more dense it becomes. All right, so that's about as good as it's going to get. We're going to go over the eye here, combing it back, come underneath, and we're going to go back over the eye again, coming underneath, and then we're going to make a few wraps right in front. All right. And that just about does the trick on it. We're going to finish that off there so that we can get a weed guard in. Weed guard's real important in this particular fly. Wrap 2 or 3 times around just to get it to be stable. Keep it from flopping around. You'll want to check to be sure that you don't have any sharp edges left from the stainless steel core of this this brush material. I'm going to straighten everything up with this. Round and around. You can see how that red just shows through. When it gets wet, that red will just barely show. And so upside down for the weed guard. What I use for weed guard on this particular fly is a weed guard pattern that a friend of mine, Vince Maggione, lives down in Miami, one of the best fly tyers I've ever met, and very innovative as well. Came up with this particular weed guard. We use, what I use is normally a 60-pound fluorocarbon. That's what this is. It's invisible in the, and it works like, if any of you have ever used a Johnson spoon, it works very much like that Johnson spoon weed guard, but it's not nearly as stiff as the steel. All right. Now this is going to be really hard for you to see. I'm just going to have to describe it for you. You use a pair of chain nose pliers, a good pair of chain nose pliers, jeweler's quality. They're not expensive, but they're a really handy thing to have on the bench. There are so many times that I reach for these pliers to change something, and in this particular case, it's essential for this weed guard. So, to begin with, we get all the way almost to the end of the piece of fluoro, and we crimp it. All right, and that creates a little tag there. There's a little thing that'll snag. All right. So we lay it down on top of the hook shank, and a blind man can tie this one on because you feel it. Once you get it onto that little tag where you have crimped it, it's not going anywhere. And it won't pull out is the nice part. Okay? You do want to pull back on the material because you do want to create some spring in this. At this point we're through with the thread, so we're going to go ahead and get it out of our way. We're going to whip finish the head and then finish that off. Cut it close. All right. Now this is where the beauty of the Johnson spoon comes in. Johnson spoon weed guard only extends to the point of the hook. It does not extend past it. So what we need to do is we use the point of the hook to mark that. Actually squirt the fluoro against that point, hook point. Slide your cutters down until you feel that rough place in the material. You can either use scissors will probably work better because you have a little better feel with them. So there. All right. So you can see that just is right at the hook point. All right. I want to try to bend that a little bit so that it has a better shape. All right. Again, with your chain nose pliers, you want to come back, maybe 4 millimeters from the end of the, or make it 3 millimeters from the end of the weed guard, and just gently mash, okay? And bend at the same time, pulling it back against the wraps on the eye. Then you want to go to the end of this, all the way to the end, and really give it a good squeeze, make it nice and flat and broad. There we go. It will stand in front of the hook point without fouling on the hook point. So there's a real good lesson in that particular element of this fly. So let's comb it up, get it straightened out, put the head cement on, and this is a Clear Cure Goo Hydro. It's become my favorite head cement. It's great for finishing flies. It's an acrylic, requires a UV light to set, but as soon as you hit it, it's done. Done. All right. And that fly is complete. There you have it. That's the Olive Destroyer with lead eyes.